Undead getting a new form. Evolved Forsaken are coming. Now, we saw these Forsaken models when they were first datamined, and we did think it was weird. These light Forsaken. What is going on? The only one that we know right now that has been raised by the light is Kaliamenethil. But are we getting more now? Undead raised by the light? Maybe in the new Halifal zone. We'll have to see. Let's see what Doran has to say.
So, the Forsaken are technically doomed. Sylvanas, while evil, was constantly pumping up their numbers, and despite them getting new leaders and establishing themselves as new Lordaeron, they're literally destined for extinction in the very near future. However, based on the new lore from the Alpha, that might soon actually start changing. They're led by the first ever Light Undead Kaliamenethil, and we didn't even know Light could even create Undead, but even more interestingly, we had just datamined a ton of new Light-forged Undead in Kazakar, completely unrelated to Kaliamenethil. And no, not just one Savior Light character, but very likely a fully fledged army of Light Undead created with a new method. The regular Undead that we're all familiar with was always a thing of misery, a punishment, but this new Light Undead might be a second chance and something someone might actually want to take willingly. This could mean that the Forsaken could get a huge influx of new members soon, but not the old Scourge and Sylvanas Forsaken, but new ones created by this new light method. Are the Forsaken evolving? Actually playing WoW on your phone is possible with awesome.
I wonder. So basically he's talking about kind of converting undead that already exist into light undead rather than raising people by the light. That's interesting. I didn't consider that when we saw these new models.
It's super easy to use. Check out my link in the description, download the PC and the phone app, and just simply connect it. The free version is great, and you can control a desktop, transfer files and such, but the real deal is the game version with custom keyboards for various games other than just WoW, and you can enjoy AFK gaming at any time, anywhere with sound. Make sure to use my code DORAN to get 7 days completely free only for the first 200 people. They also got smart lock to turn off your PC at any time, as well as hot sales with up to 40% off on Pro and Game versions. Check out awesome. So these new datamine models from the Alpha are seriously some of the most important lore that has completely gone under the radar.
Look at the light bursting through the wounds
about a day or two after the Alpha build was first online, but so far we are getting into the War Within beta and we have still not seen who these guys are exactly. However, the implications of this are actually massive, as it completely redefines Undead as it is, and it might just be the future of the actual playable race. Technically looking, the Forsaken are one of the weirdest races currently in the game. I mean, originally they were a faction for themselves and they split away from the Scourge, then they joined the Horde, and they have literally just been Sylvanas' followers that really has been their
This cinematic moment, I mean, say what you want, this was so cool. The doubt in the eye and the sudden turn to Sylvanas when they realized, bro, who's this bitch serving? She ain't serving us anymore. What the hell's going on? Little did we know there was a big nippled bald man, you know, that was waiting in the shadows. But this moment right here was really cool. And it was a big moment for the Undead.
We are forsaken by everyone, and our mother Sylvanas is leading us to the future. Then Sylvanas ditched them and called them losers and told soldiers, but before she did that, she led him to a ton of crimes, and then all of that.
And this was such a character-breaking moment for Sylvanas. She was always about the Undead. This all made no sense. Honestly, it was just bad storytelling, I feel like. Like, she could have easily, you know, left the Undead and tried to play it off in a way where she was like, you know, I love you, but leave me alone kind of thing. I have to go do this to save us. And instead, they just played it off as like this angry bitch who just thinks everyone's dumb except her. They really wrecked her character arc, to be honest.
Most recent Forsaken heritage questline that happened in Dragonfly. The Forsaken had
the flag bearer does.
They got
rid
of the biggest threat they had in their vicinity, which is the Scarlet Crusade, and they had technically proclaimed that they are the new Lord. Technically, this is the case, as most of the Forsaken really are
They are originally from there.
But with the name Forsaken and living in the literal sewers of the ruins of a city that was destroyed like a dozen times, it isn't exactly something that gives you much legitimacy or something that gets others to recognize you as a serious nation in itself. Hence, a lot of the humans had seen them throughout these years as just abominations and someone that has taken over their former kingdom and someone that should soon be purged. Well, with this new Lordaeron identity, the Undead Lordaeron, that has definitely changed, and the Heritage questline is just the start. It is very likely that we're going to be getting a revamped Undercity, or better yet, no Undercity, but
Yeah.
just the
Revamp
capital
Lordaeron,
city, and
please.
hopefully by midnight.
I hope they don't revamp the Undercity. I actually hope they rebuild Lordaeron. That's what I would want to see. And it's very easy now for them to make these cross-faction cities, so you'll kind of allow the undead to live there and, humans of today to go there as well. I really wish we saw it. Seeing Lordaeron realized in game would be an epic game moment for sure.
When this entire region is ripe for a massive revamp, we are going to get the undead building a new capital on top of where Lordaeron's once was.
That would be awesome.
Cleared it from the plague. Now, all that is, fine and dandy. The Forsaken are moving on after Sylvanas, creating a new identity, but we get to a little bit of a problem. We got this new nation with a new identity, but literally, none of these guys can actually reproduce. Most of the undead are miserable, you can tell that from any NPC conversation, and it's like their entire existence is just a torment, like a punishment in itself. As undead, they actually have no way to reproduce, and despite Sylvanas leading them through a lot of bad things, the good side to her at least was that she was resurrecting undead through her crimes left and right, despite not exactly obviously being a moral thing. So
True.
there were constantly new undead.
Garrosh said it best. Remember when he told her, he goes, "What makes you different from the Lich King?" Remember when he dropped that line on her and she goes, well, I serve the Horde, of course. And she said that. Freaking called her a bitch. Yeah. Garrosh was right about a lot of things, honestly. When you look back on it, like all jokes aside, the meme, oh, Garrosh did nothing wrong. In reality, he was right about a lot of things. That's for sure. Sylvanas was one of them.
There was a thing that was keeping them afloat.
He was very suspicious of her.
Status quo, the new identity seems kind of like a foolish concept. I mean, sure, new Lordaeron, but what about 30 years from now when most of the undead either rot away or just fall in the upcoming wars for Azeroth that are definitely coming? I mean, they're quite literally destined for doom. Well, it really seems like Blizzard may be setting up an unconventional solution to this entire matter, as we are going to discover a brand new strain of undead unlike anything we had ever seen before, and in fact, the first and the only light undead we had encountered by now is currently one of the Forsaken leaders, so it really seems like this could be the connecting point in the actual way to go forward.
What is that What is that tabard they're wearing? I get it looks like a Hallowfall symbol, right? With the crystal here. And then the little the downwards dagger or something. This looks like a Hallowfall looking symbol.
In the actual way,
even the top here, we've seen some of this stuff with the sun.
Well, Shadowlands
or a Nauru thing, maybe.
Did a lot of bad things for the lore. It changed some things drastically when it comes to Undead, and not really just changed, I mean completely uprooted with no way to backtrack to the previous lore. Before, most of us believed that all Undead is related to the Lich King and ultimately to Madraxus when he discovered Madraxus, but it turns out there is just one single dimension of Undead. More delicate lore people might remember this guy from like nearly 2 decades ago, Middle Fellstorm, that started this entire thing. This is technically the first alive undead we had seen that has been thousands of years old, and he actually had nothing to do with the current Forsaken. He was entirely kept alive through his own magic, which is arcane, seeing that he is a mage. This started showing us originally that there are other ways to create undead, and it's not just the Lich King undead, they're the only ones that exist. With the Void and the various monstrosities they create, I would wager there are their own ways to create undead, and this could probably even be possible with fell magic. However, most interestingly and completely unexpectedly, we had realized that the light is also able to create undead, which is not just entirely
And no, as far as we know, you're asking, is Kalia starting to rot a little now? I wouldn't think so. I mean, so far from what we've seen in the way it was described in the book, is when she was brought back to life by the light, all of her skin and everything looked very much alive, except for the fact that it was pale. Right, that was the way it was described. She was pale and cold, but at the same time, alive. And that was how it was described. I don't think she's rotting at all, and I think that's one of the things about basically this light undead is that they don't rot.
Victory, but incredibly weird at the same time. The only light undead we know of is Kalia Menethil, and she is the sister of Arthas Menethil that was killed directly by Sylvanas Windrunner. Then Anaru literally can pick her personally from the skies and got Anduin Vryn.
Oh, she was killed by, he's saying she was killed by, by Sylvanas. That's right, she was in the Arathi Highlands, that whole event.
to resurrect her, and we got an entirely different type of undead. I would say an undead wasn't raised through misery to become a mindless pawn or some dude in Northrend, but someone actually given a second chance. You can tell it is different because Calimenetel looks so much different than a regular Forsaken or a ghoul or some zombie. The interesting thing though, who even knows if these light undead even have free will or if they're controlled by the light? We just don't know it yet, but we'll get to that in a bit. Now all this leads
by the way, this is also not the first time we've seen the light infuse itself in a living being. I mean, we saw it's, where is he? He's right here. Turellian. Turellian has been infused with the light. That's part of what he is. That's why his eye color is very golden. It's like a golden yellow. If you look at Turellian, he is an example of a human who's been infused with the light. Now, he's living, so he's not undead. But the reason why he's still alive and everything after all these years, somebody recently commented, oh, it's because time didn't pass the same. That's true. Time did not pass the same during the Thousand Years' War when they were in the Twisting Nether. But at the same time, he is also infused with the light. It's bound to his very DNA. That's the way it's described. So yeah, he's got a special abilities because of it.
Light undead even
He's
have
an example
free
of
will
a
or
bitch.
they're controlled by the light. We just don't know it yet, but we'll get to that in a bit. Now all this leads us to the War Within and us discovering the new light undead. What is really interesting is that based on the Datamining information, this appears to be a race. I mean, loosely worded as a race. Not a one-off chosen character like Calimenetel, someone that was given a second chance, but numerous people. Like you could probably make an army.
Right, different
of these guys.
customizations
Now,
and
this
everything.
can go both ways. It could either be a positive thing or it could show us that the light is also quite evil and we might be dealing with a light Lich King in terms of this new emperor that we have learned may not exactly be so nice.
Color
Personally,
version of that is
based on the Datamine information from the War Within and the storyline, we can actually pray
They
to
do-
the alpha. My guess
I do
is
agree.
that these undead
These light undead models do look pretty janked. Like something about them looks unfinished still. But you got to remember, like these are probably this was pre-alpha models. We haven't seen any updates to them since, so that we'll see what happens with them. But yeah, they look janky as shit right now.
actually prayed through in the alpha. My guess is that these undead were raised, very likely willingly, to combat the terrible manpower shortages of this very struggling expedition of the Hellfall humans. As you may know, by the
That
lore,
makes sense.
these Hellfall humans were sent by the very powerful Light Emperor from the other side of Azeroth to fight in the final battle of the Light and the Void, but they got teleported to this crystal instead. Then
Yeah, this theory actually makes sense.
all their capable mages died in the actual crash.
Except
and
one.
never managed to establish portals so that they can establish a connection with their capital and get actual reinforcements. So for the next 15 years, they would continue to be in a constant war with the Nerubians and other hostile elements of Kazakar without having much of an infrastructure or a way to regrow their numbers. Sure, I
Yeah.
mean, these are obviously not undead, these are humans, and humans and elves can reproduce, but you
Right.
can't exactly get a new army in 15 years. Seeing that they're incredibly dedicated
Right,
to
I mean,
life-
technically, if the first thing they did when they hit Hallowfall was start reproducing, like nonstop, like just massive Hallowfall orgy as soon as they landed, the oldest child would be, I mean, you got to figure 9 months. They've been there for 15 years. So the oldest child would be like 14, right? 14-ish, a little bit older than 14. So you're not going to have an army of, kids who are between 14 and 15 years old. That's not going to really work out. So yeah, this does make sense that you're losing soldiers as you fight against these Nerubians, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to have to resurrect them somehow. You're using the light to resurrect your fallen soldiers to continue to be able to fight against these Nerubians. Otherwise, your numbers would just eventually dwindle to a point where you can't hold them back anymore and you die.
Light and the Emperor, my guess is that they would allow themselves to be resurrected through the power of the light in order to continue their mission. So literally, this might be like a willing order of light Death Knights that would return to continue the light mission and the purpose of the Emperor. Again, this is speculation, we still don't know who these guys are exactly, so it could also be negative, it could be punishment, it could be proof that the light is evil and is just raising mindless light undead. However,
Yeah,
one thing
maybe.
is definitely certain, and that is that these humans have a method to raise undead, like Calimenetil, and they seem to be able to do it in numbers. Now, with this information now leads us back to the Forsaken. I mean, if this is a positive thing and we are getting the Light Army to come to the Eastern Kingdoms in the next expansion, Midnight,
Right.
this might be a new way for the Forsaken to expand their numbers and to further establish themselves as new Lordaeron. I'm not saying that now all the Forsaken must convert or they will perish, although, who knows, it's possible Calimenetil can go
We
crazy.
might get some
but
kind of
this
light
could just
crusade.
be a new new evolved way for the Forsaken to actually grow. Think of it something like how we still have green orcs, despite the fact that no orcs are actually green. So the green orcs are the OGs, the ones that participated in the first invasion, but all new orcs are returning to their natural skin color, but you can actually play all of them. This could be a new generation of undead, and seeing that they're led by a council, it would really make complete sense with the way the lore is established. As you know, the undead are currently led by the so-called Desolate Council with 5 leaders, and this new branch of undead could be created through this method, and Kalia Manitil faction could be a thing. And seeing how similar this new model is, it could literally just be a customization that could be a new flavor for the playable characters. However, this
the thing is, it does look like they're using the undead skeleton, but it just looks so flat and weird in terms of the chests and everything. So I don't know. The hips, also the way the belt is hanging, like that's a new animation. That's not the way undead wear belts right now. So they're using the undead skeleton, but in a weird way. I'm not sure.
For the playable characters. However, this entire light undead could also completely spiral out of control, and it could be a seriously important part of the future storyline. As I previously stated, what if the light undead are not exactly just warriors with a second chance, but they're just mindlessly controlled by the Naru in the evil side of the light, and they don't even know it? Keep in mind, while Kaliak has been nothing but nice, you gotta admit, it is definitely suspicious that she was handpicked out of every paladin priest on Azeroth. Not even the biggest and the most important and dedicated paladins like Uther or Tyrion were to be resurrected, but Kalia was, and it was
I think her last name has something to do with it.
An actual Naru. Imagine if she gets a big...
I think the light chose her for a reason. She is a Menethil, thus she is basically born into a leadership role, and obviously the light wants to, the light's always been interested in making power plays, right? Like they definitely want to have people in position of power. That's why it loves Anduin, and that's why it loves Kalia. Anyone who can take a seat of power, the light wants to have a seat there.
Amount of her followers, like a private light army, it could definitely be a pretty advantageous position for the evil side of the light if they do decide to start taking over Azeroth and the speculations are true. Now, all of these are obviously speculations far into the future. We still gotta wait to see what they're going to do with these new Lightforged undead. However, this might literally be the solution for the Forsaken to further their interests and to continue reproducing, because these new light undead might be people that willingly want to join them instead of fallen warriors being resurrected by necromancers without their consent. Thank you for watching. Check out the Dreadlord Invasion of Azeroth by clicking on the screen, and check out my video on
that makes sense, right?
By also clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.
Today's society, we gotta have consent, even when you're brought back to life. That's right. So being brought back to life without your consent doesn't box right. So yes, the new way of doing it through the light, hey, maybe. They could certainly be a playable race or a variation of playable race, but as of right now, I do agree. Those models look scuffed as hell. They look like 1.0 undead models, so we'll have to wait and see whether or not we get more up-res versions. And if we do, then I'll start to believe that, yeah, maybe these guys are going to be playables rather than just like some random NPCs or something.